This one is going to be quick, it's going to be easy, and it's going to be embarrassing. Now, I started Tyranids just before Octarius dropped, and had bought a couple of these guys because they looked fun, with the weird big mantis claws and the face full of tendrils. As it turned out, a go-to secondary objective was retrieve Octarius data and engage on all fronts, which the Lictor was perfect for. Pop it in the back, have it lurk and retrieve, and rack up those points. Anyways, I extracted them from the sprues and started scraping off the mould lines and all of these weird leafy bits. This should have been a warning. I hadn't seen this sort of situation before, and the actual material felt a little different to my other models, but being a complete newbie, I just moved on to gluing, and this was a total disaster. Every time I glued it, no matter how long I held it, it just fell apart.
I'm gonna get Ted. Just don't come apart on me now.
I tried setting them up and leaving them for hours, and still, the bloody thing would just fall apart. I'd put together gaunts, and carnifex, and warriors, and throats, and tyrants, and everything had gone awesome. These little gits just wouldn't come together. Finally, in abject frustration, I went online and looked for a reason to see if anyone else had encountered this. And it was resin, and resin needs superglue. Citadel glue just won't work. My entire swarm has been plastic, and suddenly, out of the blue, a resin model that needs something completely different to assemble it. I feel this should be in large friendly letters on the box, bigger than the name of the bioform even. Big letters, use superglue. Now, here comes the shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame, shame, shame. Shame on you.
All those botched glue attempts. There were fingerprints and stray glue and chunks in the details. The models are kind of a mess, but whatever, I'm going to continue and do my best. It's hard to clean it up with an X-Acto because it takes off bits of resin just as readily as it carves off stray glue. Right, there are no options, no builds, the Lictor comes as is and you just pick the pose. I don't like the claws waving in the air that some people do. It makes it look like it's Queen Elizabeth doing a Mexican wave at a baseball game. It's nothing to do with avoiding it being targeted if a little bit of it can be spotted behind obscuring terrain. I just think it looks kind of goofy. I mean, even the praying mantis inspiration. This? Or this? Which one looks better? Anyways, onto the painting. A layer of primer, and then onto my Hive Fleet colours. The crag blue on the skin, and right away I started encountering all the deformation of all that stray Citadel glue I had been pointlessly pouring onto it. So anyway, Zeruth purple on the chitin, white scar on the inside of the mantis claws, and in the gills and the joints, and on those wriggling feeder tendrils. Then a nice layer of Nuln oil, and I left it to dry on its head so that the Nuln oil pooled up against the underside of those overlapping layers of chitin. And then some Nihilic oxide technical paint on all the white scar so that it settles in the troughs and makes it lighter and more incandescent looking. Ethereum blue dry loaded up on my dry brush and applied solidly to the claws and the tail tip, and then worked it along to get a nice gradient, and then gave a nice dry brush to the ribs and face and limbs with the dregs on my brush. Then Imric blue dry applied a little more conservatively to enhance the blue and bring out the flesh hooks as well. Then I decided to enhance the tail stinger thing and added a bit more Nihilic there. And then some very delicate dry brushes of white scar on the areas of Nihilic oxide to really make them glow. And then Gene Stealer purple dry brushed onto all of the chitin. a little touch more Nuln oil in the eye socket to bring out the dab of moot green I added, and if there's a little bit amiss, the Abaddon Black hides the stray paint from an unsteady hand. And finally, a squirt of Elmer's glue over the base that I spread around with a brush and then sprinkled on the small weld slate and stone 1/8" chunks that I pressed into the glue and then left to dry. Once it was totally dry, invert it over the packet of stone and tap the base to shed the loose stuff. And then a squirt of Army Painter anti-shine from every angle about a foot away and a single squirt up close on the slate to secure it a bit more potently in place. And there we are, a very, very vexing process, but a lesson learned that I'm glad I figured out on the humble Lictor rather than on my barbed hierogel. The Lictor, an organism designed to be an ambush predator, a dedicated assassin, and more importantly, a harvester of secrets, as its feeder tendrils devour living brains and steal all the information contained therein. With chameleonic skin and potent melee weapons, the Lictor can wait in hiding for days, maybe even weeks, waiting to strike and serve the needs of the hive mind.